Welcome to the Unstuck Podcast. I'm Cameron,
I'm Heather.
and today we have a really fun topic to talk about. Heather and I like to do this kind of chatting all the time, and it happens at like just the most random times too. That we'll have a really fun conversation, and lately, especially since we started the podcast, we'll start this conversation and we'll get a few minutes into it. And we're like, oh, let's hold on to it. Let's hold that
Because
thought.
we want to make sure that our responses as we discuss are more candid and not scripted.
Yeah. So this
Yeah.
morning, I was talking about a concept that I was feeling about. We had listened to a talk by Ed
Milet.
Ed Milet. Great YouTuber.
If you don't know who he
podcaster.
is, please look him up
Great.
and listen to him. He's
Really motivational
incredible.
guy. Great for mindset. We were listening to a talking about one more. What was it called? One more time?
Yeah, you're
Just one more. I think
yeah,
it was called Just One More.
He has a book as well.
And so,
yeah,
what it was about how we get to if you really look hard in your life, we get to this place where we'll do something really miraculous. Normally, when it's make or break, it's that last time, that just one more moment. And
his position on it is you don't know how close you are to success, and you
Yes.
would be surprised how it's one more action, one more decision, one more person that you talk to, and it leads to the success you've been searching for, and we give up so close to the finish line.
And one thing that I came to my mind this morning while I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, I do remember when I was in high school, I did a lot of weightlifting. I especially liked doing the bench press, and I wasn't a big guy, but I could usually do, I could do 235 pounds, which is two plates with a 45-pound bar. I could do 245 plates on each side. I could do that 5 times. And so I could do quite a bit, but I kept maxing out like around 275, 285, and I couldn't seem to break that for a long time. I had plateaued. Well, this was my junior year of high school. I was 17, and it was the very last day of weightlifting, and I wasn't going to get to do any more weightlifting for a while. And I didn't know. I didn't know if I was going to do any more next year, but I ended up not. Anyways, it was the very last day. I talked to my friends. I said, I'm going to go ahead and just do my max again. And I blew past my max. And at the very last moment, like people were leaving the room, I think it was close to 310, 315 pounds of a single maximum press. I had 3 people there spotting me, just to even witness it, but also to help me, not kill myself. But it just got me thinking this morning that was that moment where I had mentally stopped, but I had that just one more time left, and that is where I got that big jump.
And if you hadn't put faith into it in that moment, you might never have had the experience and not known it was possible.
Right. And just like Heather was saying, I didn't recognize how close I was to that, and it just needed that mental push to know that this is my last time. So this morning, that got me thinking. That experience and recognizing what he was talking about being true. How do we get ourselves there to that just one more? But that got Heather talking about how God works with us and how we create. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is how we create and how we tend to limit ourselves. Another thing, we went to this mindset seminar this weekend, Limitless 2024. It was great meeting, a lot of good talks. One of them, that the muscle is the YouTube guy. Keaton.
Oh gosh, Hoskins. Keaton
Hoskins. He had a good talk. He
From
talked about
Diesel Brothers is a show that he's part of.
Yeah, the TV show they're part of. He talked about being delusional is one of the first steps, and first steps in accomplishing your fantastic goals. And I think it was really interesting because that's kind of what I'm thinking about, is like how we so often block ourselves from these fantastic goals because we see them as too big. They're stupid. They're not part of my needs, right? I don't need this big fantastic thing that I want to accomplish. Like, what's the big deal? Putting 300 pounds up with the bench press does nothing for me. I don't have that on my resume.
You're not going to die
Right.
if you don't have
Right. It's
that.
not on my resume. It's not something that got me a job. Why was that even important?
I think that there's that perspective of it being a need, but I know that for myself, how I also view things like that is maybe that's not God's plan for me. And I will limit God because I will put in place like, well, it might not happen because maybe God doesn't want it to happen. And that's where I was kind of coming from this morning when we were talking, because I believe that I have been putting limits on God in ways that's actually stopping him from enabling or giving me blessings and help to achieve the things that I want. And I think it's more of a faith issue in terms of whether we go that one more step or not. One of the reasons why this concept of faith and how we limit God has been fresh on my mind recently is that there is a friends of ours who have a daughter who is 19 years old and on hospice. She was severely shocked in high school 6 years ago and has suffered from extreme health issues, and her body does not function the way that it should, and their family has gone all over the globe looking for solutions to solve the problem, to help her heal. And they just recently got the news that the most humane and kind thing that they can do for their daughter is to place her on hospice and allow her to pass. And this family has been through the ringer. They have, years ago, they lost, I think he was 19 months old. A child did not wake up one morning. And so this is their second child that they're losing. And my heartstrings have been pulled as I've been following their journey with this, and just, so devastated for them. And, but I've been so inspired at the same time. Her name is Gracelyn Wilkinson, and we're going to put a link to her information in the comments of this, or in the description, I should say, because she did something incredible. When she found out that she was not going to live for more than a few more weeks, her mom sat her down and said, what is your bucket list? What are some things that you want to accomplish and do before you die? And I can't even imagine having a conversation with my child about this. It's so surreal. My brain can't even process it. But one of her bucket list items was to professionally record an album and her own music. This is music that she has written and composed, and she wanted to record it professionally, and she wanted it to be downloaded at least 25,000 times before she died. And you're talking about weeks here. This is a goal that people take decades sometimes to be able to achieve, right? This is not an easy thing to just, okay, well, let me book the studio and let me get this all scheduled and figured out. But I tell you that because it was the urgency of which to get this done, and the community that rallied around this family and this girl, they did it. And it was released like last week, and she was number 2 or 3 on singer-songwriter on Apple Music, or was it Apple Music?
It was Apple Music, yeah. iTunes Music.
Yeah. Like they've already gotten some numbers from some of the downloads. She's gonna go so far past this $25,000 or 25,000 download goal, and she is now a published. She's been on the radio. They've done news stories on her. It's just such an incredible story, and I'm sitting there just so grateful for her. And by the way, I should say, her music is incredible. Like, these are songs that I would listen to and be like, oh, I'm saving this because this is incredible music. It's touching, it's beautiful, and to know her story, especially behind it all, it's just like I am just so impressed with what this girl has done and the great lengths that she's gone to make her dreams happen. I mean, her mother started telling stories on social media about what it took for her to do that. She the recording itself was so strenuous on her body. She was vomiting between the takes and the recordings and all the things they had to do, and like it was just so hard, but she pushed through and miracles happened. And I just was thinking about this story and thinking about what's going on for this family, and I'm like, what is the difference? Now obviously this family and Gracelyn have been focusing on saving her life for the past 6 years. So other endeavors like being a recording artist wasn't high on their priority list, I don't think, because they were working on saving her life. So I am not in any way judging that they could have done this sooner when I say this, but I'm like, what is stopping me from achieving the unthinkable? And I've got, from what I hope and feel and from any knowledge that I currently have about my health and well-being, I've got years and years and years left. So what's stopping me? If she can do this in weeks, what is stopping me from my goal of this podcast reaching as many people as possible and saving marriages and helping people heal after traumatic, hard things that they're going through? What is stopping me from this dream going forward? And it's that faith. I think so much of the time we at least I know that I will put a limitation on God and saying, well, I want this, but I know God might not give it to me this way. And here's the thing, God might not give it to me this way. Like, we might not be saving marriages through this podcast or helping to heal marriages through this podcast, but by enacting what we think is the best way to go forward and doing all that we can and putting our effort and our energy into producing this result, God will provide the perfect pathway for us to help do that, because this is a righteous and worthy goal of ours. We know that our marriage has been so divinely blessed and enriched, and we are in such a healthier place right now. And I know that pleases God, and I know that He wants that for all of His children. And marriage, in our faith, in our belief system, is paramount. It is a union that goes beyond the grave, and we believe it goes throughout eternity. That together, as a married couple, we get to become more like God, and we get to have our eternal existence together. And so this is a righteous and worthy goal. I don't even have to question that. So I can turn this desire over to God and say, help me do this, and then release what it has to look like. You know, when this family was putting this together for Gracelyn, I think to a certain extent they had to release what it ended up showing up as, but they just kept working, and it's that faith. I think I was limiting myself, saying, well, maybe this isn't the path for us, maybe it's just what I think. And you know, I think in certain circumstances, and because I've already mentioned this sweet girl, I'll talk about her again from this as an example here. Her family went through 6 years of trials and expense and traveling the world and doctor after doctor, and they searched and they did everything that they possibly could to find a cure. And God's plan seemingly is that He's taking this girl home. And they couldn't change that outcome. There are some things in life that God say is just what it's going to be. And no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to control that. We're not going to be able to control the actions of others either. No matter what rule you follow, how good you are, how many things you check off the list of righteousness, you know, as you're going through life and living by God's commandments, it's going to protect you from somebody else doing something that could harm you or hurt you or affect your life or change your life forever. We can't control those things. But I think, at least in my opinion, that God wants us to create. I look at this world that's beautiful and diverse, and it's a canvas. It's that God created on. Like, there are mountains and rivers and oceans and streams and forests and deserts, and they all are beautiful in their own way. And I don't think God put us here. If we were just here to like hunker down and get to what we needed to do to move on to the next step, then He would have created a giant office building, and we would just be super focused on all of the things that we had to do to get back to Him. He would want us to just stay focused and hunker down and do all the things that we needed to do to get back to him. But he didn't do that. He gave us this world of variety and options and opportunities. And I think he wants us to choose. I think he desperately desires for us to take our own canvas, our blank canvas, and he gives us these tools and said he wants us to paint. He wants us to create. And I think it delights him beyond belief to bless us and help us when we do that. And what ends up stopping us most of the time is that we question it. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe God doesn't want this for me. And then we slow down, especially when it gets hard. And the thing is, anything that's worthwhile, anything that's good, anything that elevates and propels you forward and transformatively into something better comes with opposition. We fall into bad habits, addictions, all the things. You don't have to work for those. You fall into those. But progression is a climb. And when you climb, you are going to be faced with opposition. So the moment when it gets hard, if we just give up, you don't know if it's just around that corner that the success is right there and you stopped too soon. And I think that's what it boils down to. I think that it's a matter of faith. And what really clicked for me was this message of course God wants you to be successful. Of course this is a good and worthy pursuit. Go do it and don't give up and expect miracles to happen to achieve the goal. Let go of what it has to look like because it's probably going to be way better than what you can imagine on your own right now.
Thanks, Heather. I really like that. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. Something that came to my mind while we were talking this morning, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. The parable of the talents. And I didn't know this until recently, but in Matthew 25, parable of talents, Christ talks about how this person who was like an employer kind of person gives his servants, these three servants, he had three servants, he gave one servant 5 talents, he gave another servant 2 talents, and he gave the last servant 1 talent. And the interesting thing is, the servant that had 5 talents went and made 5 more talents, and the person he doubled it, yeah. And the person with 2 talents, he only doubled his as well. And when they reported back to the employer was very pleased and gave them both the exact same blessing, which I thought was very interesting. And
didn't
said,
matter how much it was.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then, but the person who had 1 talent told the employer, "I know that you're a very passionate man, and that it would grieve you to lose this talent. So I made sure you wouldn't lose it, and I hid it up. So now you have it. Here you go." And he was chastised and told that he was an unprofitable servant, and what he had was taken from him and was given to someone else, so that they could multiply it. And one thing to remember: talent was not skills. Talent was actual money. That's what the scripture was talking about.
But I think it's really cool that it's translated like as a talent.
Right, because a skill, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's a gift of God, right? Like talents are gifts of God, and what are we doing with them here?
Right. So tell me your thoughts on that.
I think that I really like that story as well. It's interesting to me that I think most of us, I don't want to say most of us, I think a lot of us treat it like the last servant, where if we just hold on to it, like saving money, for example. I am one of those people that want to save. I want to see a big, fat, healthy savings account that makes me feel happy and secure, that gives me all kinds of warm fuzzies because it's safe. But, if you just kind of look at what's happening in the world right now, the economy, the inflation rate, if you talk to anybody who knows a little bit about finances, they will say that if you just by keeping your money in a savings account, you're actually losing money every year because of inflation. And you need to be investing that somewhere. Even even the accounts that will give you a little bit of interest, you still could be losing money because of our inflation rate.
Right.
And so I think a lot of us really are like that third third guy or person that hides. We want to be secure. We're not thinking, we're not looking at what it means to actually multiply and to what's the right word? We're not
Well, like Adam and Eve was told to multiply and replenish, and I think that's it kind of goes back to that. I think it goes back to that very first commandment given to them. It wasn't just you two stay the same. Don't worry, and just make it back. He's saying no. He wants you to.
I think
to
that's
expand,
how it is.
to grow, you're limiting God's glory by doing nothing.
I think the equivalent of just hoarding your money in a savings account because it makes you feel safe is just make it back, right?
Yes.
It's keeping what you got. Don't lose too much. Don't give too much away because you might not have enough later, and just get back. Check off all the boxes. And we forget that this life was given to us for us to prepare to meet God. And if you are a member of our faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, our theology says that God is a God that continues to progress. He's not less perfect right now. He is a perfect, all-knowing, like, you can't improve, but he still progresses. And we can be like that too.
Well, he progresses through his creations.
Yeah.
And I think this parable is to say that if you're limiting yourself, you're limiting God, and what you have will be taken from you and given to someone who will progress.
And if we want to be more like him, we certainly have to take the opportunity here and now on this smaller scale to create. What is our canvas? What are we putting on it? And we should be anxiously engaged in that and expecting God to be pleased with us for those efforts. It's not just about finding the best job that's going to provide for the family, can get you this vacation every year. What are you putting into the world? What are you giving to the world? How are you making this world a better place? How are you magnifying and doubling your talents instead of hiding them up and burying them?
So here's something interesting that I really want to talk about, and we could do a whole podcast on just this topic. But I really have lately come to a strong feeling of, and it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning of this podcast. So often we limit this creation to just what we think is the pious, or what God we think to ourselves, this is not okay because it's not part of my needs. It's not
It's not urgent. It's not necessary.
It's not urgent. It's not a necessity.
I will survive without it.
And I think too often we're so limiting on how we're going to multiply our talents. And it can mean money, but it also means your talents. It also means your skills. It also means how you help others. It also means we saw people on the stage at this Limitless event within moments make over $100,000 towards.
It ended up being $150,000
towards one charity,
Yep.
not counting some of the others that were up there as well. And my point is you can look at a lot of these people that they're speaking that were just kind of, maybe they're just attention seekers, maybe they're just people who just talk a lot. You could, if you have that kind of cynical mind, you could just say that. But I also saw these people, without even blinking, giving 10 grand a piece to these other charities. And I can tell you, even if you think somebody who, if they're running a company, they must be crooked as part of capitalism, whatever. Those are the same people who will, without even blinking, donate tons of money to charity.
Can I tell you that I work in a nonprofit, and I work for a man who is a celebrity who has an audience and commands people's respect, and he's got a following. And I have seen people donate $100,000 to our charity to do incredible work. We went 3 missions into Ukraine to rescue people from the front lines that were stuck there. These were elderly couples, and their villages are now, they're gone. If we didn't get them out, they might have died in the crossfire and the bombings that were going on at the front lines. And I watched people who didn't have it just sitting there. They, some of them did, but some of them to great expense, like they sacrificed a lot because they believed in it. And these are the people that are what you're talking about. Like, they might be deemed as crooked or the reason why we have problems, but they're also huge parts of the solution. Not all of them, but so many of them are, and you don't see it. It's absolutely incredible.
And I didn't want to get too far in the weeds on that side of the topic, but what I wanted to talk about is how when we talk about multiplying our talents, how we're going to help glorify God, how we're going to move towards things. And something we were talking about this morning is I've got some big audacious dreams, but I've a lot of times I've limited myself by thinking, well, they're just not, they're frivolous, or they don't serve people in certain ways, and
They're not worthy enough.
They're not worthy enough for some reason. And we were talking this morning about how that's just unnecessary. Take your dreams, take your big moonshot delusional dreams, put them on a vision board, map them out, figure out what they are, and then, this is what we talked about in one of our other podcasts, once you've defined your dream, you can refine it, give it to God, move towards it, but allow it to come out in a way that is virtuous and good,
like
however it shows up. It could come out
the
exactly the way it is, or it could come out something different. It's probably going to come out something different.
Think of it as raw material that, like a metal that needs to be refined before it's purified and valuable.
Yes.
If we don't give God something to work with and say, these are my desires, these are my goals, these are my dreams, then if we don't provide him with raw material, then he really has nothing to work with. But if we can know what those are and we send them to him and say, help me, he can make something better. So if you're worried, like, maybe this isn't righteous or worthy or good enough, God just wants you to know what you want. He wants you to create. He wants you to start practicing these things, because if you're going to end up being like him one day, you got to practice on a smaller scale. And that's what the beauty of this life is. Cameron, I wanted to kind of tie this back into how this can really benefit and affect a marriage, because that's what we're all about here. These are some really amazing life skills that can be used on their own, but inside of a marriage, I really think this is an applicable tool.
Yeah.
Because there are so many people in this life that are married. They're everywhere. It's not an uncommon institution. A lot of people are married. And I think a lot of people are living in marriages that are not living up to what they had hoped they would be. That we get married, we find a partner, we have an engagement period and a wedding, and it's all just so exciting and fun and new. And then all of a sudden, life happens. All of a sudden, there are bills to pay, there are children to take care of, there are responsibilities, there are devastations, there are problems that come along with marriage.
Yeah. And
people don't know how to fix it. And I think that marriage is one of those canvases.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those canvases that God cares a lot about, and he wants us to create with. And so, to tie this back into why we're here and why this podcast even exists. So to tie this back into why this podcast even exists, why we're here, why we're talking to you, how is your marriage? If you have a canvas in front of you, are you actively creating? Are you deliberately putting the paint on there in a way that you want it to look and you want it to feel? Or is it just happening?
I would posit that your most powerful creation canvas, like Heather's saying, is marriage. Creation in general is most powerful in life, in this relationship. Sexuality is a power of creation. You're giving birth for children is power of creation. When you work together with that partner who knows you to the very depth that your wife and husband should know you, that is the most powerful canvas you can create with. And so I do think if you have an audacious dream, you should be fighting tooth and nail for each other.
Absolutely. It probably is a foundational dream and goal if you're working together, if you want it. So for me, that has been ever since I can remember. I wanted to be married and I wanted to have a family, and that was one of my big goals and highlights that I wanted for my life. But once I had it, I didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't, I thought, even though you know better, right? You hear like, it's not that easy, you know better, but somehow you still convince yourself unconsciously that, well, once I get there, that's the hard part. Finding the right person, and then you make sure it happens in the right way. And for us, that was making sure, we were married inside of our temple, which sealed us for eternity together. That's the hard part, right? And then you have life, and it's not as easy as you thought it would be. And for me, there was a lot missing until we started really working on that foundational canvas of marriage and creating together. And as we've come together and done that, and as we've been deliberate and we've taken these desires and dreams to God, we've seen a lot of growth, a lot of happiness. We still have a lot of questions, a lot of things that we still haven't figured out yet, but we're so much closer as we're engaged in this. And I really believe that out of all the canvases we paint on, this is one of the most crucial and critical, especially if you're already married. All right, well, we appreciate you coming along with this discussion. It's been fun. Let us know if you have any questions. Let us know if there's a topic that you would like us to cover. We have an anonymous form that's in the description of this video. Please utilize it. We would love to hear your questions, and we'd love to help you in any way that we can. That's why we're here. We just want to help couples build the most epic intimacy possible. So thanks for joining us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.